Welcome back to Reenacting. In today's video I'm going to demonstrate how to sew insignia onto an SS tunic. I know someone had commented in one of my previous videos that they wanted to see an insignia sewing tutorial for a tunic, so here it is with an SS tunic. I will end up making a Litzen tutorial sometime down the line, but this should hopefully cover just about everything else that you'd need in terms of sewing onto a tunic. Now, with the tunic you see in front of you, obviously this one has its insignia already sewn on. Eagle, tabs. But the reason I have this up here is because the eagle is actually sewn onto the wrong spot. Let me demonstrate. If we start at the bottom of the sleeve and then work our way up, the eagle should be spaced out pretty much to the even of that fold. And now you see mine is sort of off to the right-hand side. It's too far back on the sleeve itself. Another thing is that it's actually tilted too far back as well. If I start at the bottom here, and supposing I was going to put a cuff title on this tunic, like that, if we work that cuff title up the sleeve, since it is parallel to the bottom edge, and we work our way up to the eagle, we can see it's pretty darn tilted and, way too off. So that needs to come off and be resewn on there, so that's what I'll be doing first off. I do actually have a tunic that has the eagle sewn on properly. This is an M42 tunic, you can see by the pockets. And just to demonstrate and show, we start at the bottom of the sleeve here again and work our way up to where the eagle is. You can see the eagle is pretty nicely spaced out right in the center of that sleeve. And same as before, take a cuff title, put it at the bottom, put it parallel with the edge of the sleeve, and we work our way up. And you see it's just about perfectly angled as well on the sleeve itself. So that's demonstrating how it properly should be sewn on. Put that right back over there. And with this tunic, I'm actually going to end up upgrading it to be a Danish volunteer tunic. So I'm going to change out the tabs as well as sew on a cuff title and a foreign volunteer arm shield on it. So this will be the one that I'll be demonstrating, and we'll get to show how to do tabs, eagle, as well as a cuff title and the arm shield. But first things first is to take off the eagle that's already on there. So let's pull it out from here and get to work. There we go. There's the back side. Grab my scissors and start snipping away at it. Alright, now as you can see, I've got the eagle taken off, and now we're ready to reapply it in the proper spot. So I've already put some basting tape on it, peel off the little sides. Again, I love using this stuff, very helpful, and it doesn't leave any sort of residue or marks. But now we'll take the edge, starting at the bottom here, work our way up, make sure the sleeve is folded, and according to regulation, the eagle is supposed to be 16 centimeters off of the top seam. So let's measure down 16. Puts it about right here. I'm going to gently lay that on there, not press it all the way down. Remeasure just to be sure. There's 16. And now, again, if I take the edge of this sleeve and let's just check it with the cuff title. Cuff title, work our way up, and that looks pretty darn close to how it should be. Doesn't have that nasty angle that it had on it, and it's again centered in the sleeve here. I've got about 4.5 centimeters on either side, and again about 16 down. Actually no, it's about 15.5, so let's move it down just a hair. Let's see that. A little more. That looks about right. Again, still centered here. Got 4.5 and 4.5. And there's where the eagle should properly go. Now I will sew this on using a zigzag stitch on a modern machine. So I'm going to do that off camera here in just a moment. But almost all, let's see, eagles definitely, I'm trying to think if there's anything else for SS that had a zigzag stitch to it. I'd have to double check with the arm shields and all the rest of that, but I know zigzag was kind of preferred with most of the work that was done, so that's what I'm going to do in resewing it on here. Okay, now here we are. You can see I've got my eagle sewn on here, nice, and it's pretty good and well spaced out, angled correctly as well. And you can also see I've got the rest of the insignia here. None of this is attached right now, but I've just kind of placed it in the general locations of where it's going to go. The main thing with all of these is just to make sure that you have all your measurements correct. So, like I said, 16 centimeters down for the eagle. Now the chevron for a Sturmmann is going to go 1.5 centimeters. So bring that on there and bring it down a little bit. And that's more or less where that will go. The cuff title at the bottom goes 14 centimeters up, and conveniently on any tunics, 14 centimeters happens to be exactly the length of the cuff in it, so you can just measure your cuff title to go right to the edge of that little seam right there, and you're all good. But for greatcoats, you'll need to measure 14 centimeters up, which I believe puts it just a little bit above the French cuff on greatcoats, if I'm not mistaken. As for the shield here, I don't have any exact measurements on that as what regulation said it was supposed to be worn at, but I'll just go off of original pictures, which seems to show that it's pretty close in relation to the cuff title itself. So, all of these are sewn with a single straight stitch that's not zigzagged. I went and double checked all that, and the eagle is stitched zigzag, but then all the rest of this will be either machine straight stitched or hand done. So typically cuff titles and arm shields are machine done, and then with rank chevrons it's a mix of both, because again with field promotions and that kind of thing, sometimes the guys would have to sew that on themselves, other times they would have machines that they could do it on. So I'll probably end up doing that by straight stitch, but it can be done either way. One more thing I've got here is I've got my tabs as well that I need to sew on, but we're looking at this one because I need to put on a little rank strip on it. And again, I've seen these both ways, with a rank strip being folded over it like that and then sewn on, And I've also seen it where they literally just kind of lay it right on top and hand sew it, just tack it down right to the tab itself. So I'll probably try and fold this one under as much as possible, especially since I have to apply it to the tunic anyway, fresh. Might as well make it look as nice as possible. And again, just look at original pictures, and you see that these are probably like a good, centimeter? Half a centimeter off of the edge of the board. So this corresponds to my Sturmmann chevron on the sleeve here, and I'll add those as well. I have seen, for the most part, it looks like collar tabs were sewn on straight machine stitched as well, but I may end up hand sewing these just because I'm afraid my needle might break on my machine, but we'll see. I'll test it out and end up sewing it on either way. But I did actually come across a very helpful little picture that I found that I'll put on the screen right about now, and it basically just shows like all the different measurements for where to put stuff on your tunic, whether that's a old fighter's chevron, or a tank destruction badge, or a cuff title, or your sleeve eagle, and it also has that info on awards as well, which is super nice. So that's what I'm using this to go off of for the most part, just since it's really helpful in that aspect. Unfortunately, that is for an SS tunic, which is fine because almost all of that carries over to the same with Heer tunics. Cuff title just goes on the opposite sleeve, that kind of thing. And really the only difference between a Heer tunic and an SS is just the breast eagle and the tabs. The tabs you're still going to try and line up as much as possible to the edge of your collar, and then with the breast eagle on Heer tunics, it's just measuring up about like 1.5 centimeters, I think, off of the pocket, and sew it on from there. So, alrighty, now I'm going to go and sew all this on here and then do an update from there. Okay, here's the next update. I've completely sewed on the cuff title here, as you can see, front and back. Now, the proper way to sew on a cuff title, when you have the ends, when they meet together in the back, because as you can see with this extra cuff title I've got here, they're way too long. So what you do is you'll end up cutting them, and then with that loose end that you have, you fold that back onto itself, do the same thing with the other side, and then you bring them together so that they overlap just a little bit on top of each other, and sew those together. So that way you don't have this super long cuff title that's overlapping over itself, quite a ways, and it comes together neatly in the back, something like that, and then you sew that in place, so as I've done with this one. That was done with a straight machine stitch, stitching right on the bottom edge there, just on the bottom of the little silver tape, and then again on the top edge, and it runs just above the edge of the cuff. Not sure if that is visible to the camera, but you can kind of see where the stitching is right along here and on the bottom there. So again, just right above that cuff, and then just try and make it as straight as possible across, fold it in the back. And then the other thing I sewed on was the tabs here on the collar, as you can see. And now you see I did sew on the rank stripe for a Sturmmann onto the blank tab, and how I ended up doing that, is, let's see, I got my spare tab here, is I ended up folding it over the sides like I had said I would previously, and then on the back end what you do is you just zigzag across with your needle several times, going back and forth, and then I did see a couple that were tacked, where I had sewn down on and then zigzagged across on the other side a bunch of times. So I did end up doing that with mine. I can't demonstrate it, as you can't see the back, but it is tacked on one edge there, just going right on down. So, just to help keep it in place a little more, that way it doesn't slide around as easily. But otherwise, for the tabs themselves, I did end up having to hand sew these because it turned out to be too thick for my machine. Again, not sure if that is visible or not, but I did just kind of do a fairly neat line around the edge there, and it is sort of visible on the edge, but mostly hidden. So it looks nice, and then just to make sure that you match up the angles when you go to put them on the collar, you want to have them, as close as you possibly can in the same positioning of where you have them on the collar. So again, mine overlapped on this little bottom stitch here a little bit on this one side, and if we go to the other side, it overlaps as well. So just be careful when you're angling them and you go to sew them on. Again, I use that sticky basting tape and just put a little strip on the back to help hold it in place while I'm tacking them down. So, and just sew those on. So again, if you have a machine that is strong enough to sew it on, then do that, as that's how they were originally done. But again, these were sewn in factories on heavy factory machines, so they could take it. If you've got a modern machine that can't, then just go through with a hand stitch. So one last detail, I did change out the shoulder boards from Aufklärungs to just standard infantry, since it is a infantryman's impression with the cuff title and all that. So last things to do here is going to be to put on the arm shield and then the Sturmmann chevron right underneath the eagle there, and we'll see if I can get the angles on my machine with this guy. Otherwise I will end up just hand stitching it, and this one will be hand stitched on. So again, one last time, this is about 1.5 centimeter off from the eagle, and then this one I'm just kind of guessing, and I'll probably end up putting it maybe 2.5 centimeters off of the edge of the cuff title. So alright, now to sew on the last two pieces. Here's the completed tunic with all insignia sewn on it. Now, I ended up leaving for the Reading Air Show before I was able to complete this video, hence why it's about a month late. However, over the course of just 2 events and about 5 to 6 days of use, the cuff title completely fell apart, so I had to remove it. I purchased it from Soldier of Fortune, so unless it's for a display-only tunic, I can't really recommend their RZM cuff titles for reenacting use. Regardless, I hope this video was helpful and gave clear indications of where and how the various tunic insignias should be sewn. With that being said, I'll see you all in the next one.